Hey guys, welcome to episode 5 of the CraigSkitz podcast. This week with Greg Miller. Greg is known for kind of funny, known for his time at IGN, and is just known for his love of Oreos. One of my favorite people, just like all of my friends here on the podcast. That's why they're here. But I really enjoy this conversation with Greg. I feel like we could do this. This conversation goes for just over an hour, but I feel like I could talk to him for, all day. So take this. It's really good. If I can get you guys, please spread the word about the podcast. Let people know if you're listening to the podcast somewhere. Let people know it exists, whether it's on iTunes or wherever. And please give this video a thumbs up here on YouTube, because YouTube apparently likes that. We would really appreciate that. If you are a best friend coming over from Kind of Funny, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. Go check out the back catalog. We got a bunch of great guests so far here on this, on episodes 1 through 4. So go check it out. So here you go. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for watching this week and listening wherever you are throughout the world. Appreciate you guys. And once again, please find me over on Twitch, twitch.tv/CraigSkitz, streaming Monday through Friday at 9:30 a.m. Central Time. So start your day with your boy. We'd really appreciate it. All right, guys. Let's go. Enjoy the episode. Hello, Greg.
Hello, Craig.
It's great to see you.
It's good to see you, my friend. It's been too long.
One of my favorite people in the world. I'll tell you what.
Oh, just shush now.
Okay, fine. That's good. Podcast over. We're done.
Podcast.
Thanks for liking and subscribing, guys. Appreciate that. So how has the pandemic been treating you, dude?
As well as can be expected. It's such a weird thing, I think, talking about the pandemic and how it's been going for us, right? I think we were so lucky to be able to take Kind of Funny out of the studio, and over a weekend, Kevin had us up and running. And then I think, we had one day where we didn't have video, that first Monday, and then Tuesday, he had it all figured out. And so we were able to pivot and not miss a beat, and luckily not see. It's I don't know what you have seen so far and what you had seen over at Game Attack, but it was this interesting thing of my initial thought was Patreon's going to dip, and YouTube views are going to stagnate as well. Podcasts are going to stagnate as well, because obviously I've always described what we make as distractionary content, right? You go to your real job, you're driving a truck, you're, being a UPS person, you're doing Excel spreadsheet inside an office somewhere, and you listen to the content. And so I thought for sure that, okay, well, this is going to, people are not going to have that routine anymore, and they'll lose us. And
my guess,
yeah,
total opposite.
Yeah, exactly.
Through the roof.
Yeah, it went up big time. And I think, games made sense because obviously we had a whole bunch of big releases. We still do have a bunch of big releases. There's the consoles happening. There's their E3 is 3 months long now. But like even old stuff, like the Kind of Funny podcast, which is, the evolution of the Game Over Greggy show, which has been us sitting at a table bullshitting like that, when it was our only product, obviously was really high in views and downloads, and then over time came down and got to where it was. And to see that spike back up, I started having a conversation with the audience on Reddit and comments and stuff like that. And it was this, no, we're coming back, or, because now that it's changed, I have more time, or sure, I need something that's more regular. I need a reminder of regular life and real life and social interaction, right? Because that podcast is us all just hanging out.
Isn't that crazy?
Didn't expect that. No,
yeah,
exactly.
No. Legit, we felt like when I was talking to Sean at GA, it was like, listen, batten out the hatchets. We may not make any money for however long. Like we can survive for 6 months. We'll be all right, and we'll just ride this out as long as we can ride it out, right? And it turned out to be the total opposite. Our viewership grew, everything grew, revenue was great, and like it was one of those things where it was like, what had just happened? How did that happen? And why? But when you take a step back, okay, that makes total sense, right? It makes total sense. And but I have a journal I started to write in. I started writing it at the tail end of last year, and I went back and I was looking at my journal entry from when this pandemic started. And there's so much fear attached to it. And obviously there's a lot to be scared of, but when it came out the gates, it was like, listen, everybody's going to die. The market's going to crash. Literally half the United States may die from this, and that reflected in my words. I'm like, I've never been scared of anything, right?
Sure.
And I've never been scared of anything like that. And it was one of those things where I as I'm writing this, I'm like, I'm scared. I am scared for my, but now 3 months later, obviously things are still not great, but we have this new normal, right? And we've all adjusted. I think that's the thing about humans, which is pretty fascinating, is the ability to adjust on the fly and figure things out. And Look, humans are not the smartest things in the world. I mean,
We prove that every day.
yeah, but we're able to adjust, which is good. So
yeah, that was the thing when it started. That my wife Jen, that was what she was talking about too. Of like, remember that humans adapt so crazy fast, and that even though this is, because I was with you, right? Of like the way it happened in our world was, Jen and I had gone to Canada, come back on a Monday because I was originally going to go to Austin and film something with RT, and they were like, hey, Warner Brothers says nobody from outside of Austin can come here, so you can't come.
Sure.
So rather than go Montreal to Austin, I went Montreal to San Francisco, and it was on that plane where people were starting to wear masks, people were coughing, there was big gaps, and I was like, ooh, I should not be on this plane right now.
Yeah, right.
And when we landed, it was that constant ratcheting, and it reminded me so much in a very different but similar way of 9/11. Where when 9/11 happened, I remember being at college, and I'm not even talking about the attack, the aftermath of it, where there were the runs in the gas stations, people were being turned away from blood drive centers. You had people in the hallways talking about, I think we're all going to get called up. I think they're going to do the draft. I think this is going to happen. Like, coming back that week, it was the week right before shelter in place began. I think our final day in the office was the 13th, so it's earlier than that. But it was this every day getting a new tidbit from somebody who knew something or knew someone, or I'm pulling my kid out of school thing. So on Thursday, finally, of that week, we had a conversation at the end of the day with everybody, the Kind of Funny team in the office, and we're just like, hey, we want you to know we're thinking about this. You're our number one priority. We want to keep you all healthy and safe. Right now, our plan is to keep coming into the office, but to prepare to work from home, like if we had to do that. But right now, we think we're all going to be safe if we come in here, yada, yada, yada. And that night, literally we had that meeting. Jen picked me up and we went to the store, and it was pandemonium in the store. People trying to buy stuff and just ripping things off shelves.
Dude, and you're in San Francisco. That's the thing. Like, it was bad in Texas, but in San Francisco, I mean, I can't even imagine, like, next level insanity.
Right, city, everybody on top of each other.
Yeah.
And so, we bought what we could and as we were getting back to the car, Tim called me and I answered it, and he was just like, we're stupid, right? And I'm like, yeah, we got to just tell him to work from home. And so literally it went from Thursday, like, we might one day say this and this might change even by tomorrow, like in a joking sense, to literally we came in and we're like, hey, this is it, no more. And so we started working from home. And it's been a struggle, I think, in the sense that, back to your original question of how am I doing? I'm doing great. The business is doing great. I'm lucky enough to be with my wife, our, good friend in our house and stuff. Like, it's a chill quarantine and it's fun, and we, drink wine and watch movies, and I play a ton of games, and it's, great. But you have those days where you are super down and you can't put you can't put words to it of why you're depressed and why you're angry and why you're grumpy. And then I've started having conversations with people about it, and they're like, remember, this is not normal. This is not what we signed up for. We've all adjusted because you have to. What's your other option? But, earlier this year, it was the normal life of flying all over the place and doing all these different things and going to an office and having
being able to go anywhere,
like
anywhere, period,
And I think that's what's like so insane about it, is the fact that, like, I remember early on when we'd have these conversations and feelings, your knee-jerk reaction is like, well, maybe we should just get away. Like, oh, you can't get away from it. There's nowhere to go. This isn't like your town's passed a rule you don't want, or there's a concert next door you need to get away from. It's like, you can't go anywhere. Yeah. And for me, it's, amplified by, I'm in San Francisco, like you said, my family is in Chicago. If I needed to, and I really wanted to, right, you could drive out there. We could do the 2 weeks of quarantine. We could figure it out, kind of thing. It's amplified by my wife being Canadian, right? And me, literally our love tearing up her life and bringing her here, and us starting a great life that we've loved and enjoyed, right? But then it is this thing now of like, what happens when something bad happens in Canada? And she needs to go, and like like, what does that do to residency status? Would she get stopped at the border? Would they let her in? Would they let her back in? How do you do this? How do you do that? And it's like, even, when she came here, you like, okay, that's a long distance from your family. You're in another country. It's a whole new world, even though it's same continent, but they're very different, obviously,
sure.
America and Canada. But when it was normal, it was no matter what, right? Cool. We can dip into savings and get you a plane ticket on an hour's notice. It's not that big of a deal. But now, like, that, even that's ripped away, where it's just like, man, what the hell? Yeah,
I have a buddy who is Canadian. His mom, bless her heart, she was very sick. Not COVID, but he really wrestled back and forth whether she should go or not. And because if he left LA, he would have to be quarantined for 14 days before he could see. And so he finally decided to go, and he and his mom ended up passing on the way on the plane. It's the worst. Like there's so many of these crazy situations that are popping up that people have never had to deal with before.
Right.
That like I said, we're just figuring it out. And but like I said, humans are resilient, and I think that everyone's going to be just fine whenever this ends. This is going to. Hopefully in 5 years, we look back and you're like, man, that was crazy.
Yeah, what a crazy. Yeah, exactly. Like, when you're when this started and people started talking about like what the influenza outbreak of like 1908, like
1918,
to think about like we're going to have another mark on us like that, right? Where when we have kids and they go to school and they're doing some, I don't even know, 8th grade project on the 2020, the lost year where nothing could happen. You have to explain what it was like. It's weird.
What a great way to describe the lost year, Well,
that's what it feels like, right?
Yeah,
and I think even now is like, everybody wrestles with it and tries to figure it out, and phases keep getting pushed and moved around. Like even whenever it all clicks back into place, it's going to be so slow and such a roll up to it that I don't see anything being back to quote unquote normal until at least next year. And even then, it's going to be not everything. It's just weird.
And I'm dealing with, I have a 6 and an 8-year-old who are getting ready to go back to school, and school is just chaos right now. I mean, they missed the last 2 months of school, 3 months of school, and for their last grade, and they're going back and they're going to do like online learning. So online learning for a kindergartner and a 3rd grader, it's like, we try to
spans.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's tough. But anyways, I think you mentioned something in there. I realize we're starting this off kind of deep, but at the same time, I hope those listening enjoy this. You mentioned something that was kind of crazy. I'm sure there's some people who are listening right now or watching right now who didn't experience 9/11. And
that blows my mind every time that conversation comes up when we talk about how young our audiences are, where you'll say something like that and it's like, I think even Barrett, who I work with, right? Like his memory is like he was going to kindergarten or something. Like, oh my God. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God.
Yeah. I think you're right. This is definitely one of those things. Instead of it being a singular moment, this is just going to be one of those larger experiences that we put a pin in and go like, okay, 2020, September 11th, 2001, and go down the list of these moments in our life that, I mean, truly, legitimately, not just change society, but change us as people.
Oh, totally.
And we've had, like, in our lifetime, we've had several, which has just been nuts. You think about, Columbine, you think about 9/11, you think about, obviously, the quarantine. It's just crazy, man. We live in such a weird, crazy time right now.
That's the thing, I think of when I was growing up, like, my mom's maiden name is Kennedy, and, like, by, 15 branches of the family tree, she's related somehow to JFK, right? She never hung her hat on that or anything, but I know, people in her family did. But it would be, I think, of growing up and, seeing her read books about JFK and all this stuff and, the assassination and, the JFK movie with Costner happened. And I remember she'd tell that story and she's like, it's so vivid for her, right? Of her being in class, they were watching some movie, one of the other teachers coming to the door crying, telling the other teacher her crying, and this, and she's like, you're going to have a moment like that in your life. I don't know what it is or when it is or what it'll be that'll change everything. And you think I remember being like, oh yeah, well, 9/11 clearly is it. The further you got away from it. Sure. But now even to have another one here in this 2020 thing, which is, again, not the same thing because 9/11 was this impact and then the reverberations from it, whereas this is this weird Groundhog Day. Everything is the same yet a little bit different, but is it ever going to end? And you don't know. And you mentioned it earlier of your buddy, right, and sadly losing his mom. But it's that thing of when it started. If you could have told me cool, this is starting and it's going to go on the rest of the year. You're moving from, because we, I don't know how it was for you guys, but when we went work from home, it literally was all right, cool, well, March, April washes. Yeah. Maybe late June, maybe early. You had that idea, and now I feel like that's just we've lost all that. It's been beaten out of us. And so it really would have been I wonder if I would have known what I would have done differently. If you would have known at the start of this, right, would we have just gone to Canada and that way sure. She could be with her folks and I could just stream from there and do all this from there? Would we have just gone back to Missouri or the burbs of Chicago and rented a dirt cheap place and just hung out there, let the lease on this place go? There's so many different little things that we didn't do, and now it's not that it's bad or I regret it, but it is that thing of man, if you could have had that information, what would you have done?
Well, and that's just it. Even now, we truly have no idea how long this is going to last, right? Like, it's like, well, yeah, I remember it's like, well, it's going to be a couple more weeks. It's going to be, now we're going to extend the quarantine out this long. And it's like, well, if you would have told us that initially, we would, you're 100% right. It's if you had the information, what can you do with it? So, but either way, well, let's talk about your career, because I love to talk. Let's get out of the quarantine, bringing it down. Let's bring people up to happiness.
Yeah, everybody who's listening is like, I am living this. I don't need to hear about it.
Well, and we can also bring it back down. So you had cancer. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
No.
Let's jump right to that.
We'll get to cancer in a little bit. Now, so you so you went to Mizzou.
Correct.
I also visited Mizzou. I had a girlfriend. I don't know if I don't know if I ever told you this.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
Okay, good, because you and I are connected in some weird way.
Yeah,
I had a girl that I nearly got married to that went to Missouri, who actually was Truman the Tiger.
That's awesome.
And you were the leader of the Spirit Squad at Mizzou, correct?
Right, yeah. Well, the unofficial one, the Antlers. We're the one that the athletic department doesn't recognize and doesn't like, because they cross some lines.
Sure, of course. So talk to me about your experience, because you talk about Missouri like it is a part of your heart. And
sure, yeah.
I had this thing about college. College is fascinating to me because I went to a school that was a big commuter school, and it was just a place I went to get a degree, right?
Yeah.
But I wasn't a part of the culture. I didn't live on campus. I wasn't surrounded by it constantly. So I feel that those who are really tied to a university, they either lived on campus or they had some amazing experience. It's during these formative years where you're an adult, but not really an adult. You think you have everything figured out, but you truly don't. That 18 to 23, 24, where you think you have everything figured out, but you truly have no idea figured out. So what is it about Missouri that you truly love that makes you go back and be like, I will bleed black and gold?
There you go. Nailed it.
Until I die.
I mean, the TLDR elevator pitch of it, I think simply is like, you nailed it, right? Of like, it's the home I chose. It's where I got to become an adult. I got to become the person I wanted to be. And the longer version of that is long, but we're on a podcast, so it works out. Right? The way I always talk about it is that in the 4th grade, I knew what I wanted to do with my life. In the 4th grade, I had an issue of Game Pro. I'd had obviously Game Pro and EGMs before then, but it was the one with Death and Return of Superman on the cover, Maximum Carnage ad on the inside. And I read it cover to cover every night for a month. And then finally, it dawned on me that adults were getting paid to write this. They had to. This wasn't just somebody's project. So I marched into the kitchen with the magazine. I said, Mom, I know what I want to do with my life. And she stopped cooking dinner. And she's like, what's that? And I'm like, I want to write about video games. And I held up the Game Pro. And to her credit and my father's credit, they went, okay. Like we can make that happen. We can work on that. That's, and it was, obviously a different time, no internet at the time.
Sure.
So it was very much like, it's a magazine. They probably got a degree in journalism. That's where we should go. You should get involved with the school papers. You should do all that. And so I did, throughout grade school, junior high, and then when I went to high school. And then when I got to high school, I was lucky enough to have a moderator on the newspaper that, walked up to me one day after class and handed me a brochure. And he's like, if you're really serious about this journalism thing, you should go to this summer camp. And I looked at the front, and it was a University of Missouri journalism school summer camp. And he's like, it's the best journalism school in the country. And then I flipped it over and looked at the prices, and I said, I'm not going to go to the camp, but I'll go there for school.
Right.
That was the idea and how it was based, that I was going to go to Mizzou, the best journalism school. I was going to get a journalism degree, and I was going to be able to write my own ticket to go to an EGM, a 1UP, an IGN, a GameSpot, whoever. I thought they'd all fall all over themselves. And so the wrinkle to that story that I don't talk about that often is that for me growing up, right, I went to 2 schools. I went to St. Pet's, and I went there from kindergarten to 8th grade. And then I went to St. Francis High School for those 4 years, which, if you're keeping track at home, right, means 13 years of being in a uniform every day.
Sure.
Being told to conform in a lot of different ways every day.
So there's a private school.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's a conversation that I didn't understand at the time, and I don't think influenced my experience in high school. But I remember in 7th or 8th grade, because you know how you switch teachers between periods, or at least whatever. And so I had this, Mrs. Wick was my teacher multiple times. And I remember one day after class having a conversation with her, and she's like, you're going to love college. And she's like, I'm not saying you're going to hate high school. Your high school will be fine, but you're going to love college. And she was so on the nose about it, because throughout grade school and junior high or whatever, that's fine. You grow up with these people. You're there. You whatever. When I got to high school and the way they wanted conformity, that's when you're in your teenage years and when you really are struggling to be yourself and break out. And I was not the loud center of attention person I am now, but I was that dialed back to a high school degree of wanting that and having that constantly. I felt pushed back on to where I have no love for my high school at all, right? Like I literally would, my friends used to give me so much shit because I think it was, I'm assuming we can curse on this podcast,
You
right?
can absolutely say whatever you want.
Perfect. Fuck yeah. I think it was end of sophomore year, but it might have been beginning of junior. But I just stopped bringing a backpack home. I was like, I just don't care. Like, I'm not doing this. It was so easy, and I was in honors English, and then my grades got so low they put me in regular English and yada yada yada. But newspaper I loved and dedicated and was all about and was writing. So when I graduate St. Francis, right? And I am similar looking to how I am now, but I've been in this uniform forever. They won't even let me wear Converse to school. Like I'm over it, right? And I show up on freshman year orientation day at the University of Missouri, and I am wearing, from the ground up, I'm wearing Converse high tops red, tube socks up to my mid calf, jean shorts, a WWE, WWF at the time wrestling shirt,
Nice,
right?
dude.
Hawaiian shirt over it, these black rim glasses, and my hair was bright blue like Millhouse. And it was literally like I'd repressed all of this for so long that when I could finally go, I just did everything at once. And I didn't understand for years how to make colors not clash. Yeah, I had graduated and I was engaged, and we were at somebody's goodbye lunch, and somebody made fun of jean shorts in a conversation. And I was like, I wear jean shorts. And they were like, well, yeah, but like they're your thing, but they look stupid. I'm like, wait, jean shorts aren't in style? Like I went all of college wearing jean shorts thinking like, Stone Cold wears them. No big deal.
Right.
And so it was this thing of like, I got to college and it was everything from it was put up or shut up on so many different levels. Cause it was like, listen, I'd never say I rebelled in high school, but I pulled away from it, right? I didn't like the reins on me. And so literally I chose a school that was 6 hours away from anyone I knew. No one I knew from high school went there, and I had no family there. And it was like, this is what you wanted. We're dropping you into this world that is a blank slate in every way, shape, and form. You don't know the area. You don't know the school. You don't know anybody. Like, you can be whoever you want to be. And that was what I embraced about it, is it was that I got to be who I wanted to be. And anything I put off on the back of like, well, school wouldn't let me do this or wouldn't let me do that, it was all of a sudden like, I'm going to feel this out. And that was what I had wanted. And that was so liberating. And again, all conversations come back to this, like, right? My story goes that, I got dropped off at school, August 21st, maybe August 28th, 2001.
Oh, down to the day.
Well, I mean, because everything, I had 2 weeks, two and a half weeks of normalcy of what life, like literally like you're 18, you're an adult, you wanted to be on your own, you wanted all this stuff, go ahead and make your fortune, make your world. And it's all right, cool. And then one day, I woke up to somebody in the hallway saying the second balcony just collapsed. And I was on the first floor, and I was like, oh shit, if I look out my window, I could probably see that. I bet we're on the news. And I went, you know what? No, I'm tired. I'll catch on a replay later. And about the time I did that and put my head back down, my roommate burst into the room and he's like, Greg, turn on the TV. And he ran over to my TV and turned it on. I'm like, why are we on the news? Still thinking it was about the second balcony. It wasn't the second balcony. It was the second tower. 9/11 had happened, and like we were in Missouri in a different time zone. And so like, it was like literally my parents had come down for parents weekend. 9/11 was a Tuesday. They had left on Sunday, like on a plane or whatever, you know what I mean? And it was this thing of like, whoa, like, you know what I mean? Like suddenly everything was different. And it wasn't even different in the way of like, my life was already different of having gone to school. It was, the world is different and all planes are grounded. And I'm talking to, my high school friends on IM, and they're talking about how, they went to DePaul or whatever. They're downtown and there are fighter jets circling Chicago. And it's like, wow, like, you know what I mean? Like it was, Mizzou's tied up in all of that, where going there, being myself and whatever I wanted to be and making mistakes, going there, having this life-changing, world-changing moment, going there and, you mentioned the Antlers earlier, and like finding them and finding a instant friend group and family in them, where, again, like when I originally showed up, knowing no one, it was that I had there was like some literally first day freshman like mixer or whatever thing I went to and met a few people there that like PlayStation and video games and Family Guy, and I was like, all right, cool, and hung out with them for the first weekend. And then that second weekend they went home because they were local, and I literally, finished classes on that Friday and then walked out into the hallway, went right, and I just went down door until I found an open door. And I knocked on the door. I'm like, hey, I'm Greg from down the hall. You guys want to be friends? Like, I got, and they were like, yeah, sure. And I hung out with them for a night. Like, that's how, much of a free slate it was. And then,
hey, but that takes balls, man. That takes balls.
Oh, well, again, it was, you always said you were this kind of guy, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you always said you wanted to be that person. Like, again, like, I mentioned wearing the Hawaiian shirt. It's important to point out, I guess, for the story that I think it was, I'm so rusty on it now. I think it was freshman and sophomore year, but for sure freshman year, I wore a Hawaiian shirt every day to class over a wrestling or video game t-shirt. And that decision was based solely on a Simpsons throwaway line where Homer goes, Marge, only two kind of guys wear Hawaiian shirts, big fat party animals and gay guys. And I was like, I want to be known as the big fat party animal. That's what I want to be known as in college. I want people to think that I'm a fun time. I got blue hair. I'm out here having a good. And I wasn't like that crazy. I mean, I drank a lot of beer, but you know what I want to.
Yeah, sure.
But that was like me formulating an identity from before I even got there of what I wanted to be.
It's so funny. The Simpsons helped mold you in your career.
Totally.
Like totally without even thinking about it, which is great. And your reputation. Do you have a story that you've never told before about college, like something that you did, like a deep regret or like some sort of happening that happened during school? You were at a party, something crazy happened, and you skipped out, you missed the cops, or something along those lines. Anything that you've never really told anybody before?
Well, the problem is I podcast for a living. I'm trying to think of what I haven't said.
I know.
I have so many great stories that answer the question, but I know I've told them.
Okay, well,
let me give you my favorite, my biggest.
Sure, please.
You said a party you left too early or regret doing so.
Sure.
So I'm in charge of the Antlers. I'm the Grand Poobah of the Antlers, which again is just this crazy rowdy group of sports fans at University of Missouri. Go to basketball games. Back in the day, it was a lot harder, but you find the players' information, their phone numbers, whatever. You crank call them in the middle of the night. You send pizzas to the hotel. You wait there. You hold up photos of their ex-girlfriends while they're trying to shoot free throws. I'm the leader of that. I've been in it the whole time. So this is my junior year. We show up for a tailgate. So this is for football. We show up for a tailgate at the normal tailgate spot. We all party. We're all having a great time. We're way too drunk. And eventually somebody comes over to me because I'm in charge. I have all the tickets for everybody. I have the season tickets for the entire group. And they come, hey Miller, I'm going to go. Can I get my ticket? And I was like, and they're like, what? I'm like, I left all the tickets in the Antler house. And like, granted, not that far away, but I've been drinking. It's now a football Saturday in Columbia, Missouri, so everything's on lock. I'm like, and somebody there who was totally sober, like, I'll drive you. I'm like, great. Got in the car, went over to the house, got the tickets, came back, started handing out the tickets, and like, man, you missed it. And I was like, what did I miss? And they're like, Hollabaugh wrestled a deer. And I was like, I'm sorry, come again. And what had happened is we tailgate, I'm sure the Antlers still do, tailgate next to the football practice facility and then also the softball stadium. So there's basically this entire fenced-in area that then is open field for practice drills and all these kind of things. And so what happens is that they leave the door open, obviously, so that if you're parked there, you can cross and get over to the football game and vice versa and come back and forth. And so while in like the 35 minutes I was gone, a random deer had gotten turned around and run into the practice facility and was just running around the fenced-in portion. And again, I don't know what everybody's interpretation of Missouri and Mizzou would be, but there are a lot of country boys here.
Sure.
a lot of
Middle America.
A lot of salt of the earth. They were raised on farms out in the country. They are crazy people.
Breadbasket of America, Greg.
Exactly. And like this Hollabaugh kid, like there was this gigantic tree in every tailgate for 4 years. He would climb to the top of it and hang from the top of it. And it was like, I would have broke my neck the first time ever trying it, but this kid could do it no problem because he grew up doing it his whole life. Anyways, the deer's in there and it's just running around, and eventually Hollabaugh looks at it and kind of does like the beautiful mind math equation and is like, there's only one way out, and it's through this doorway right here. It's the same doorway people are going in to cross. It's going to come out through there. And so he finished his drink, from what I understand, walked up, stood next to it, and sure enough, the deer eventually figured out and made the circle. And as it came through the way, he jumped and put it in a headlock and wrestled it to the ground and then got on top of it and then grabbed it by the antlers. And from what I understand, and this is not a good story, but it is to me. he had it and then was trying to break its neck. Because
Oh,
again, he's
boy.
a hunter. He's a country kid. He wanted the antlers. He wanted the deer. He wanted the venison. Like, this isn't just killing to kill. He was trying to hunt. But of course, you're drunk and at a football tailgate. And he didn't plan through, he got to A and B. He didn't get to C, D, E, F.
Sure.
And so eventually a normal person was walking by and was like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, I'm just petting it. And they're like, "Get off the deer." And he got off the deer and the deer ran away. But it was like, that story is so, I can't even envision it. I want to see that with my own eyes, and I never got to see it with my own eyes.
What was this guy's name again?
Hullabaloo.
Greg, I got a special surprise for you, because joining us right now is Hullabaloo. No, just kidding.
There's like some cell phone footage on a Nokia flip phone that has been lost for years that we discovered for this.
We'll get back with Greg here in just a second, but I want to remind you guys, if you guys really enjoy the show, I'd really, really, really appreciate it if you were to head over to patreon.com/CraigSkitz and support the show. You can listen to it early, you can watch it early, and you can actually support the process of bringing back some classic shows that I used to work on, top 10s, possibly some video game vaultish stuff, if you're familiar with that from the old Screw Attack days. Potentially bringing that back over on Patreon, so head on over to patreon.com/CraigSkitz, and you will find them potentially here on this channel. Pretty crazy stuff, so go give it a go and check it out. Greatly appreciate it. Let's get back to the podcast. Oh man, that's awesome. That's great. And I think that you're right. That is something that allows you to kind of, look, that is an experience that, it's not a man riding a shrimp or anything, which is one of the best memes in the world, but a man riding a deer at a tailgate's pretty outstanding, trying to break its neck. I mean, whatever. And those are the things that bring you back to college that you truly enjoy.
The stupid stuff like that. Right?
Yeah.
But then in the same vein as your question earlier, it's like, it's that and it's the family. And, I am lucky enough that, my best friend in college, I got to be his best man at his wedding. And one of the things I said about it, encapsulated, it's like, it's awesome to be his best man, but I'll never be able to repay him for making me a better man.
Oh, Greg, you have a way with words. You're a poet.
Well, it's what I always talk about, man, of like, I came to Mizzou, a kid from the burbs in Chicago, where cutting sarcasm was the way you showed that you liked somebody. Mm-hmm. Like, you were, and I'm not like talking about people like neg girls or something. I'm talking about like being mean to your friends, right? I look back at some of the things I did to my best friend, Poe, who's still my best friend from high school, and it's like, oh my God, like, why would I have done that, right? But it's how we were raised, and it's what it was, and da-da-da. So to get to Mizzou, be accepted into this group, and then by way of that, be accepted into their actual families, and, on holidays, be taken to their families, and meet these small town, country families that are the salt of the earth, like we're talking about, that are just the nicest human beings I've ever met. Like, that softened my edge in a good way. I don't mean like, like not like a tool getting rusty or something, but like, it made me see of like, oh no, it's okay to show love to each other. It's to tell your friends you love them, to, be the person I want to be. And like, so much of that runs in with my same old stories of like being obsessed with Superman and Smallville and all this stuff of like trying to do the right thing. And meeting those people through a group that's known for crossing the line and being crazy is this weird dichotomy of what it means to me. But it was that, Mizzou's the home I chose. You know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong, suburbs of Chicago are still where my parents live and it's still home and all that jazz. But like, Mizzou is my place. And even once I graduated, I stuck around a year and a half. And it was like, Columbia and Missouri, and that was me, and it was where I chose to be an adult, and I became the person I wanted to be. And again, for somebody who hated high school so much, I was at Mizzou to get a journalism degree, and from day one, I had a plan on how that was going to happen. Everything I was doing made sense why I was going to the next thing, right? Like, you're doing your gen ed requirements, sure, but then you're going to take this class, and then it's going to lead to this, and then and it was that, I get it. There's a plan here. There's a system. That's why I'll try and apply myself here.
That's awesome. And like, you're very goal oriented, and I love that about you. You set a goal, that was your goal, and you accomplished it, which was great.
That's why I love platinum trophies.
There you go. Well, we're gonna get to that in a little bit. I can't wait, because we have some great Patreon questions from the backers, so they got some good stuff. So you applied. Apparently, you spent so much time. You had a news article, or you had a game over section. Right? Listen, I am proficient in reading people's Wikipedia. All right.
Look at you. You're crushing it.
Listen, on top.
You put in the 15 minutes of work.
Maybe 12, 13.
12, okay.
Not quite 15. But so you had this newspaper article, and that kind of led you to the job at IGN after like applying everywhere. And the one thing, it's funny talking with, I spoke with Bruce Green a few weeks ago, and he was saying the one thing that, like nobody hired him initially, and it took him like 10, 15 to 15 resumes and applications to the point where the HR director was like, you need to stop. Like, you need to stop emailing us.
Our time.
Like, we will tell you when it's time for you to get a job here or whatever. We'll let you know. But it seems very similar to you as well. You really pounded the pavement and grinded, if you will, to get your job.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I thought I'd go to Mizzou, I'd get this journalism degree. And again, I know it's a little bit ridiculous now because if you're a fan of games journalism or enthusiast press or whatever you want to call it, like lots of people have degrees. Lots of people grew up wanting to do this. That wasn't when I was a young man. That wasn't what it was. I was really tip of the sword, I think, in a lot of ways with that, along with like Patrick Klepek, who was doing the exact same thing I was doing, but from University of Chicago, or no, University of Illinois, Champaign. And so I was always watching him on 1UP, and when he'd get internships, I'd be like, Klepek. But no, I graduated and I was like, I got this degree in journalism. Let's go. And I applied everywhere, and nobody responded.
Sure.
And I eventually got. I took a job that I was to work at the Columbia Daily Tribune, which is one of the daily newspapers in Columbia. And I was just going to be a general assignment reporter. And so I had that in my back pocket. I was really swinging for the fences with all these other jobs. Nobody would do it. Eventually, Inquest Gamer hit me up for an interview. They were a spinoff of Wizard Magazine. They were usually tabletop games, so they're about to start video game stuff. Mm-hmm. And I had the interview on the phone, and I remember it was the first time in my life, and there's only been one other occasion, but the first time in my life where I could not stop talking. And in your head, you're like, stop talking. You're blowing it. And I couldn't do it. I was just like, they were literally like, so how are you, Greg? And what are you playing? And I'm like, I've been playing. And it was like, okay. Well, we'll talk to you later. You'll know. And I never heard back from them.
Oh, man.
And so, yeah, I went to the Columbia Daily Tribune that day. My first day, I remember getting out of the car, shutting the door, and being so dejected because I felt like I had failed. My idea was I was going to graduate, go straight into wherever, GameSpot, IGN, you name it. And luckily, I got into the newspaper office, got my desk, got my first assignment, and I was like, oh, right, no, I love doing this. This is fine, and I can make this into what I want it to be. And so after a year of begging and working there, I convinced them, to give me a column in their weekly magazine insert they did, and it was called Game Over. And then they also gave me a blog that I decided was going to be a daily blog. And for me, that was the light switch of, all right, they don't know it. They still think I'm general assignment, but I'm actually their video game reporter. And like, that's the back burner. And so made a point to blog every day on the digital version, had the column every week.
Are they still around?
6 months. Yeah, they've gone through a whole bunch of changes. So it's not my team anymore, and it's got bought by a bigger company and yet.
But can you find the blogs though?
Yeah, through like the Wayback Machine and a whole bunch of different things. It's not easy because again, like this is 2006, 2007 web servers. Like they got off that crap and did a different thing. Blah blah blah. You can still find some of it, yeah. But after 6 months of it, I applied for a job at IGN, and I always say that I applied for that job at IGN, and I get it, spoilers. And when I look back at my emails, I had sent them on the after college email address that I had a year and a half. I had applied for 12 jobs, and this was my 13th attempt. And on this attempt, I got contacted, interviewed, and hired in 24 hours. So literally overnight, everything I had ever wanted came true. And when I got out there, it was this conversation immediately. Like day one, I'm getting my desk, I'm getting my, PS2, my PS2 test kit, my PS3 test kit, and my PSP again. And at the end of the day, they were like, all right, cool. Like, you did great. Any questions for your first day? And I was like, yeah, what changed? And they were like, what? I'm like, I applied here 13 fucking times. The first 12, you wouldn't even talk to me. This time, you hire me in 24 hours. And they're like, oh, you proved you could do it. Like, the first 12 times you did it, and there were more on my mizzou.edu address. The first 12 times you did it, right? Like, you had a video game review, and then 6 months later, a column somewhere, and then 3 months, like, there was no consistency. Whereas this last 6 month thing, right? It was 5 days a week for 6 months, showing that I had a voice, that I knew what I was talking about, that I could follow up on things I talked about earlier, all these different things. And that was the proof that, the interviews were formalities. It was the writing they had gone through and done that they were like, no, this is the guy.
It's so fascinating to hear you say that because Bruce, like I go back to, Bruce and I had a conversation about games journalism and such, but I think it's fascinating, the idea that a lot of times companies just want to see that you can do it prior to investing in you, right?
Yep.
It's kind of the unpaid versus paid internship mentality of like sometimes it's okay to take an unpaid internship because people want to see that you have the gumption the ability to put forth the effort before investing in you, especially if you're coming right out of school or something. And you know, your unpaid internship was paid because you're working at the paper, but you're putting it in your spare time to do this with the ultimate goal of taking the next step in your career, which I think is fascinating. So.
I tell people all the time, like, and granted, it's drastically changed from when I started into where we are now, right? 13 years later.
Sure.
But it is this conversation of like, I'm like, if you want to do this, you need to be doing it every day. Because like, it's the same way I think back, you know, being a dumb kid, but like, you know, the original plan was go to Mizzou, get my degree, move back to the suburbs of Chicago and work at EGM. Because, you know, EGM was out in Oak Brook, Illinois, which is like right next door to me. And I remember when EGM put out a call in the magazine one time of like, hey, we're, you know, I forget if it was a review crew contest or if it was the first time they were like, hey, we're looking for reviewers. And, you know, I was like, oh my God, this is my dream. Because it was way after fourth grade, maybe like sixth.
Dude, EGM,
maybe seventh.
I mean, come on.
Exactly.
Best.
But I sat there. What did I do? I wrote my first 2 reviews and I sent in my first 2 reviews. And it's like, oh my God. Like, I always say that. Like, I knew from the 4th grade I wanted to do this. Why the fuck wasn't I reviewing everything I played? Why wasn't I writing something every time I played something? And it used, as a kid, you don't think that way.
No
and
way.
I don't think there definitely weren't people saying that. And so, yeah, that, you know, to your point, like, that's 100% what we look for right now, right? You know, Blessing Adeoye Jr. is our latest full-time hire. We picked him up in January, and it's Blessing, you know, got inspired by us doing it on Podcast Beyond, us doing Kind of Funny, and then started OK Beast, his own outlet where he was podcasting every week, if not every other day, doing different shows, doing different things, and showing that, first off, you're terrible when you first start podcasting, myself included. Everybody's awful. Do you do that thing of like, when do I breathe? Oh, do I let them talk? Oh, am I talking too much? Am I talking too little? You're in your head about everything. Like, you need to, you know, take so many swings at bat before you're even decent at it. And so to go out there and do all that and show you have that voice, that's what it's about. It's the people who hit me up and they're like, and it happens at conventions, and it happens in emails, and it happens everywhere else, at least when you could go to conventions. I want to do what you do. I want to start a podcast. And I'm like, oh, awesome. What's stopping you? Oh, well, you know, I don't have the right equipment. I don't. And I'm like, stop it. You just took a photo of me with a smartphone. Yeah. You have all the equipment you need. Go make those podcasts with that. And it's you know, when we started doing, I guess that's actually incorrect. When we started doing Up at Noon at IGN, which was my talk show, right? It was a partnership IGN did with YouTube, which meant we started a new YouTube channel, but they promoted it. It was called Start, all these different things. And I remember going to my first VidCon and looking around at and talking to Justine and talking to Phil DeFranco and looking at this ecosystem and being like, oh my God, like, I remember putting up the original videos I had. I had a shitty digital camera. I went out and recorded the first Walmart being bought the first PS3 being bought in Walmart in Columbia, Missouri, and I put it up. And I remember getting the email weeks later of like, this video is doing really well. Do you want to monetize it? And it's that, like, why didn't that cue in my head of taking the camera and turning it around and just talking into it, right? Like, I could have been that for video games. I could have been one of those people with them, but I didn't think that way.
Greg.
And granted, I was lucky enough to build an audience at IGN. I just didn't know that yet. It wasn't until we left that I was like, oh, I did it in a very different way, but I do have an audience.
Because I think you turned out all right, Greg. You know, it's like, you know, what awards you win? The Entertainer of the Year?
Trending Gamer of the Year and the South by Southwest Gamer of the Year. I don't know what that one is, but it's...
What a star.
Look at me, everybody. 2015 was a good year, and we're waiting for another one.
You really peaked, Greg.
Right.
Well, so
I was joking around about that somewhere in on a podcast about like why Blessing should listen to me. Like, wasn't that half a decade ago? And it's like, ooh, you're right.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I went to the very first VidCon right after Screw Attack was acquired by Fullscreen. And they're like, look, you should probably go out to this thing. You know, it's kind of it's going to be the big thing, this VidCon. So I got sent out there and go out there, and it was at the Anaheim Convention Center. I don't even know if it still is, but I go out there and I walked in, and I was greeted by, I don't know, maybe 3,000 screaming tween girls, right? Like screaming at I don't know, YouTuber A, right? Whoever it is. And I walked in, and within like 10 minutes, I was like, this is not me. I can't do this. This is not who I am, and I can't. So I spent the next 2 days at Disneyland, and I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to do that, and that's what I did because I just couldn't do it. I was like, this is not this is not what I want to do, you know? So.
I'm right there with you. Cause yeah, it was in 2012 up at noon. It started, and then they were like, you should go to VidCon. I was like, what is VidCon? And they were like, it's like GDC for YouTubers. And if you're not familiar with GDC, the Game Developers Conference, usually annually in San Francisco, and there's panels from developers talking about what worked for them to other developers. And like IGN would send us there and we would sit there, and half the time you're bored out of your mind because you don't even know what they're talking about. But occasionally they'd mention this unannounced game they're working on or something like that. But that got me excited. And I remember going to that first VidCon, and yeah, the tweens are there. People are screaming on the escalators. They're taking, but I that was when it still was, at least for me, learning the platform, going, how do you use social strategy? How do you, make a better thumbnail? There were these workshops / panels that were happening that were fascinating for me and teaching me so much. And year after year until we stopped going, I got less and less of that, where it literally did just become, hey, everybody, it's just an influencer event, and there's a Taco Bell booth, and there's this, and there's this. And like, we had access that, we won, I think, a bunch of GoPros, and it was like, literally, it was like, all right, so we're just here fucking off for the weekend. And originally IGN sent me there back in the day because it was like, oh, you have a talk show, go meet these people, cross collaboration, have them on the shows. Sure. And then you get to, it's kind of funny, year 3 or whatever it is, where we're there and we're hanging out with the same people again and again. And it's like, yeah, no, I love Harley. This is cool. But like, why are we doing it here? Like, why? Like, I was with you. Like, that thing became so much. It lost what I needed from it, which I liked hey, learn how to use YouTube better. Sure. And it became more like, this is a party / meet and greet for your fans. But I think in a similar way to you, my fans weren't there. Sure, the YouTuber audience isn't the one, usually the same crossover as whatever Kind of Funny is.
The way I always described VidCon was, do you remember that Jimmy Fallon sketch "Ooh" from Saturday Night Live, where he played like a tween girl, and she was down in the basement, and they would come downstairs, and they'd oh my gosh, and
I do vaguely remember this.
Yeah, and they would always be like, yeah, and they'd scream, and it's essentially like a 3-day version of "Ew," that skit. So that was my world. Let's talk about IGN for a minute.
Sure.
Because
Imagine Games Network.
Oh, is that what it's called?
I know it stood for that for about 6 months, and then when they got bought out forever ago and everything changed, that it's just nothing. But the name's too popular now.
Okay. So IGN, from an outside perspective, is seen as this big fortress. This fortress, sure. It's like Bowser's castle, right? It's this fortress that has everything going for it. It's the biggest, it's the baddest, it's a number one powerful beacon of giant. And you hear about, they're the people that everyone loves to hate because they're jealous of it and they want to be, right?
Yeah.
Talk about your experience inside IGN, what it truly is like for those who have never been inside the walls of IGN. Because I've been inside IGN, and it's just a bunch of people working hard, trying to do their job, right?
I think it's exactly what every other group is. It just has a different vibe depending on what group you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Like IGN is a unified team of incredibly talented individuals wanting to make the best content they can. And I think that the problem is you get saddled with every sin of the past when you're there.
Sure.
You know what I mean? When you do something somebody doesn't like, they'll throw that in your face, or they'll, call out whatever else mistake you've made here or there, right? Yeah, they love to be hated. This is like, must have been, a 2007 story, but it's always stuck with me. And I try to, carry it with me, even though Kind of Funny is in a way different spot than IGN. But I remember one of the podcasts I used to guest on in Columbia, Missouri, when I left, they did a joke on their show about me being at IGN and some review I did or whatever. And I wanted to create like a fake beef with them, kind of like a wrestling thing,
sure.
because that's obviously all I know how to do.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And I remember asking my then editor-in-chief, Hillary Goldstein, like, hey, would you be cool if I did this? And I explained it to him, and he's like, nah, dude, like, Coke doesn't talk shit on Pepsi. Like, Pepsi talks shit on Coke because they're trying to get to the top of the mountain. If Coke's the top of the mountain, they just have to take it. Like that, you know what I mean? Like, what else, it's not a good look to swing down, right? You don't punch down. You want to punch up. And I was like, oh fuck! Like, this was obviously all in jest, but I was like, I get that. That makes sense to me, and that I think really did temper it. Where, I can't. I hesitate to speak right now, right? But like, at least when I was there, and I'm sure it is still the case, but I'm not checking IGN as, feverishly every day as when I work there. Mm-hmm. every day somebody's putting up something they're immensely proud of, that they love. And this is definitely still the case, that they're proud of, that they worked hard on and they did it, right? And so it sucks that those op-eds or those reviews or those guides get overlooked by, oh, they're just a top 25 site. Oh, they always give Call of Duty a 10. Oh, blah, blah. And it's like, oh my God, shut the fuck up, man. You know what I mean? But as I think we've all learned, and you see each and every day, the internet just loves to hate and complain. And it's, like that was one of the more freeing things for me of leaving IGN. And like now I didn't have bosses. And so when I see someone talking shit about us or whatever, and I pop in and I have like a rational conversation with them or try to, 9 times out of 10, what does it go, right? Oh my God, I never thought you'd see this. I'm sorry, I'm having a bad day. Oh, it's never like they really hate us. Okay, well, occasionally they really hate us. But most of the time, it's something completely different that they're just bagging on, to your point, the corporate monolith, sure. IGN, that's been around forever, and oh, they're fucking partnered with Comic-Con again, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, no, that doesn't trickle down the way you think it does, right? Like when you see a banner ad on a page, I was always as surprised as you were as what the banner ad was going to be. And I love the fact that I shit all over Naughty Bear, and Naughty Bear bought the front page trying to distract from the review, where I was like, don't buy this piece of shit.
That's awesome. So it's funny to hear, you talk about just IGN, the culture inside of it. I mean, it was obviously, it's been a long time since you've been there, but the culture, Destin now works there. Destin used to work for me, and he's like, one of the big guys over there now.
I know, right? I remember when we hired Destin, and now he's like been there longer than I had,
right?
Or had been.
But I mean, the culture seems to be pretty positive. Obviously, when you have that many people working in a certain place, naturally someone's going to mess up sometime and do something that's going, there's this whole thing about plagiarism and stuff that is always,
Philip Newson,
so like, and it's like, you can't, and it's easy to do. It's easy to point a finger at one person and blame it on the whole company, and sure. that's very hard to do. But it's just fascinating to see people's general thought process on the big guys. And, it's funny you mentioned the punching down aspect, right? I've always felt, even with Screw Attack, Game Attack, for us we've always clawed, right? Even now, especially, right? I've started over and I'm trying to claw at the mountain.
You love starting over for some reason.
Really weird, right? really weird. But it's a constant claw. But I love confrontation. I love fake confrontation. We've done it with you.
With fake conversation. Or fake conversation.
Well, listen, newsflash, Greg, I actually like you, right?
No, I like you too.
Good. Just making sure. But like we've done it with Meg 64, we've done it with you guys, and just over my career, and that stuff is so fun, right? It's just so fun to me. And I guess hearing you say that now, I guess that means you saw us as equals.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
Oh yeah. That was always the thing. I mean, like that. The first VidCon taught me, and it's stuck with me ever since, and it's been awesome to see it. I was trying to facilitate it when I was still at IGN, but now for sure, and I think obviously I wasn't like the pioneer of this, but I was trying really hard. There aren't competitors, there's just collaborators.
Yes.
It's silly to sit here and think for a second that whether I was at IGN and I was fighting for an exclusive over GameSpot, that GameSpot's success would take away from IGN's. And it's the same way for us, right? Like I've learned it time and time again, because when we did break away and we did go to Patreon, like January 5th, 2015 changed my life. And whereas I think I was late to Twitter, we were late to YouTube, all these different things. We were tip of the sword on Patreon, and we were big fucking news for a long time, and we were their golden child for a long time. And when Easy Ally started, when Funhouse wasn't Funhouse yet, but we knew they were doing something, when you guys left, when Danny O'Dwyer started their thing, back to the whole thing of, learning from experience, right? I remember when Easy Allies was starting and when Funhouse didn't do the Patreons, so it was more Easy Allies. I remember that, okay, here we go. Like numbers are going to dip. People who subscribe to us are going to see them come and go, oh, we should go support them. Our numbers will go down on both patrons and dollars. When in fact, as usual, it's not like that. And it's usually the reverse. Easy Allies coming in brought in a brand new audience that didn't want to make the jump for us, but made the jump for them. And I'm already here, so why not give them a buck? Why not try kind of funny? Well, people bringing people to the platform helps the platform rather than try to actually hurt the contributors, the collaborators, the creators.
It's funny you mentioned that, because there's this wonderful logo I have.
Right
that's weird how it works out.
People should go check that out.
Watch the episodes early and ad-free.
You can get all the episodes early and ad-free.
It's crazy. You should just go check that out. Great job, Greg. Killed it.
No problem.
Okay, so you're at IGN for a long time. You decide to make the jump. You guys Was there a moment at IGN that you said, okay, it's time to go? And how did that whole process work in your mind? Because, for me personally, leaving Game Attack to start this, there was no moment. For me, it was just kind of like, all right, it's time. It's time for me to, there's nothing Sean did or any of the guys did or any of the community members. It was just, for me, it was just time. And I've always heard people explain the idea of, well, you just know. And for me, I just knew.
100%. Yeah, it was glacial for us because you figure it all goes back to Up at Noon in that first VidCon where I went into that first VidCon not wanting to go do it. And I remember saying, like, I understand YouTube. We're a YouTube show. Like, I get it. And then coming home from that VidCon being like, oh my God, YouTube's what I've been looking for. Because I've been looking for a creative outlet. I tried writing a comic. I tried writing a kid's book. I'd done all these different things. And they weren't what I wanted. I wasn't passionate about it. But going to VidCon, learning about YouTube and really what it was, and it's this thing of talk right to your audience and do whatever you want. Like, who cares? It's a platform you can do whatever you want on. I was like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. So I started the, youtube.com/GameOverGreggy. Started, reviewing Oreos, talking to my roommate. Nick and Tim would come over and film. We would hang out for, a Saturday. Then I would take a day off of work to sit there and edit all the footage and learn Premiere and, constantly go to YouTube and be like, how do you do that? How do I make the footage black and white? And because I knew none of that. And it was like a new skill and hobby to pick up. And once Up at Noon got rolling, once the YouTube channel was rolling, I remember I'd start going to events. And for the longest time, and I think it still is, like, our industry, and I'm talking about you being a video game player, and I'm painting with a broad brush, attracts mainly introverts. I honestly do feel I am an introvert, and I think that is never more obvious than when you'd go to these press events with dozens of other people who do the exact same thing you do, have the exact same hobby you do, might live in the same city as you do. We'd all go, and you'd stay in your clique. You'd only talk to IGN people. They'd only talk to GameSpot people, and it wasn't Jets and the Sharks kind of thing. It was just like, oh, how do you talk to each other? And this is all different now.
Yeah, dude, listen,
totally.
I'm the same way. The only reason, until you're in your comfort bubble, right, your zone, that's when you are yourself. But at the same time, you're 100% right. I would go to these press things, these journalist things, and I would stand in the corner and just, you freeze up. And I'd go there by myself. The Screw Attack Game Attack is like one person, and we don't have a full team. So I'd stand in the corner and, and just kind of look around and be like, all these guys are way more important than me,
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's, I had Andy McNamara, formerly of Game Informer, now of EA, on We Have Cool Friends the other week. And I was telling him that I remember going to events and Andy McNamara, EIC of Game Informers, walked in. I'm like, I'm too intimidated to talk to him. I can't go talk to him. You know what I mean? And that's how it was. And so when the YouTube show hits and my YouTube channel and Up at Noon start hitting, it was the weirdest thing that I would go to events and people would come up and talk to me. And they'd be like, oh my God, you're doing something really cool. You're doing something. And then inevitably they'd say, so how much longer do you think you're at IGN? And I was always like, I'm going to be here forever. Because I used to be a joke in the office of like, oh, Greg's going to be, Greg, I remember distinctly going, and I won't name names because one of them's still there and he did not think of the same way I thought. But going to a dinner in my first few months, and we had a visiting editor come. And so he sat down, we all had beers, and he's like, so IGN isn't the end of the road for you guys. What do you really want to do? And there was this awkward silence, and everybody looked at me and they're like, well, it's the end of the road for him. And I was like, this is all I ever want to do. I'm going to be here forever. And only one of those people, not that guy, is still there. But it was that thing of I'm never going to leave IGN. What are you talking about? IGN was, great to me because I always say that I was vocal about what I wanted and they reciprocated. Not always immediately. I always wanted more money, and it was a slow crawl to get more money. But it was I want to lead the channel. All right, you're going to lead the channel. All right, the video stuff's taking more priority. Can I move to video? You can move to video. Can I edit? You can edit. And these little things of when I said what I wanted, they helped me grow that way. And that is a tough thing to do. And I know a lot of people at IGN didn't have that. And that still is the problem with games journalism, or whatever you want to call it, where people get promoted to a certain point and you look around and you go, all right, there's no mountain left to climb here. My boss's boss is never going to leave, so my boss is never going to leave, so this person's never going to leave. I'm never going to make more money. This is what my role is valued at. I want to have a family. I want to buy a house. I want to do whatever. I'm going to go to PR. I'm going to go to game development. I'm going to go be in-house editorial in EA, BioWare, or whatever. IGN didn't do that for me. So I was like, I'm going to be here forever. What are you talking about? And it was like you're talking about, super slow, where, we'd start getting momentum. We'd do a new show. We started doing the Game Over Greggy show, and then it was the little things that would start setting you off. I remember distinctly Fran Mirabella, who, does stuff with us right now, but, ran the IGN video team forever. There's a moment where I'm screaming at him in an office and I go, "You don't own me." And like, as soon as I said it, I was like, what a cliche thing to say. But it was that, I had signed up, I'd done my job and I had gotten IGN however many panels at PAX East, and I got a Game Over Greggy show panel. And they pulled me aside and were like, "What the fuck?" And I'm like, what the fuck? What do you mean, what the fuck? Like, it's an hour where I'm going to go do this. I'm like, consider it my lunch break that I don't take when I cover these shows usually. You know what I mean? And there was this whole thing of like, we started butting heads about what, you're wearing a Game Over Greggy shirt, which is your handle and your gamer tag, but it's also your show name. So really, and it's like, are you, and I go back to this whole thing, there's no competition, there's just collaborators. Like, why is this a problem? And we'd have these little moments like that would annoy you. And, when I started the channel, I wanted to do it on the up and up because I didn't want to, jeopardize my career there. Mm-hmm. So like I had filmed all the stuff that we launched with on the Game Over Greggy channel, and then sat on it for like 3 months as we ran through legal. And it was, as we kept going up the chain, this definitely dates when we were having these conversations. My checkmate move every time in the conversation with every boss as I went up the chain was, I don't understand what you're scared of. The worst case scenario is I get huge on YouTube and I'm the next Felicia Day, and Felicia Day works at IGN. And I said that all the way up to the lawyer who was in charge of Ziff Davis. And he's like, no, the concern is you become Felicia Day and then Felicia Day goes and works in Machinima. And I was like, okay, I guess. But that's like, what a weird way of trying to hold me back so that I won't go anywhere. Like, that's not how this works.
Right.
Again, I think it was a different time. I think obviously we've seen so many personalities come and go from things like that. But it was a slow movement, and it was, even in 2007, I'm doing introduction podcasts. I would always be like, I'm going to be here as long as this is my fucking passion, and this is what I enjoy doing every day, right? And eventually we started hitting those things where, Nick, I left IGN in 2015 with 8 years under my belt, and Nick was just shy of 10. And it was that thing where, because there was 4 of us when we left, right? It was me, it was Colin, it was Nick, it was Tim. Mm-hmm. And it was all of, Colin had been there a long time, just about as long as I had, but that's not counting even when he was an intern. And so like, it was like, if we're going to do it, we should do it. And Nick was like, I've almost been here a decade. I want to do something different. Like I'm getting to the point that if we don't leave to do this, I'm going to leave and do something else. And I don't know what'll happen with this. And so there was all these conversations about, like, if we're going to do this, how do we make it work? Blah, blah, blah. Like, and I know, Craig, you make fucking dick from YouTube AdSense, right? Unless you're fucking whoever.
Hey, my first podcast, my first podcast made $17.
Oh, you're rolling in it. You're rolling it. Look at that.
Just letting you know. So, once again, patreon.com/CraigSkitz if anybody wants to support the show.
If you appreciate the content, give a buck out.
Please.
And so that was the thing of like, we did a weekly meeting for when we started taking Game Over Greggy more seriously. And we had this meeting where it was like, all right, I want everybody, it was Nick. He's like, everybody go home. Next week, come back with the number you need to live. And he's like, not live well, live like you're paying your bills, you're eating ramen, you're doing your thing. Mm-hmm. And we'll see what we're making compared to that. Because we were at this time with Studio 71, like we had an MCN, we were selling merch and stuff, but it was a side project. And so we came back with these numbers and it was like, okay, no, not a chance in hell this is happening. We'll address this, in a year or whatever, see where we're at in 6 months or whatever. And like the next week was another VidCon. And on the way there, Tim was reading something and showed it to me. And he's like, have you heard of this? And it was an article about Patreon. And he's like, when we get back, we should investigate it. They're in SF. It's like, oh, okay. Went to VidCon. We did a panel, afterwards we came off and we were doing a signing and taking photos. And as we were talking to somebody, this group walked by us and did like the double take and ran over. And they were like, oh my God, you're Greg Miller. And I'm like, oh yeah, man. Hey, blah, blah. And I'm talking to them and I looked down and one of them was wearing a Patreon shirt with the big logo on it. I was like, oh, you know the Patreon guys? And he's like, yeah, I'm the vice president. And I was like, whoa, you are the, and like, it just worked out that they cared about us already. And
nice.
So like we booked a meeting that day, we booked a meeting that day for when we came back to San Francisco. We came back, it was when they were moving to their first office. Nothing was there yet. We were like the first meeting. The plastic was still on the windows they had just put up. And we explained that, here's where we are, but we don't know. We were thinking about doing a rebrand because it was, if we're going to take this seriously, it's very weird for Nick and Tim and even Colin to walk up to people like, oh yeah, I'm from the Game Over Greggy channel. Sure. Oh, are you Greg? No, I'm not, but he's not every show. And it was like, all right, cool. And so they were like, this is exactly why we're starting this, where you guys are at, and you should do it. And so we did it, and in one day in 2014, right, September, or maybe August, we relaunched It's Kind of Funny. We started the first Patreon, and we put out what we hoped, you can never make it, what we hoped would be a viral video with Hunter Pence from the Giants here in SF, MLB, because he had this whole thing about Hunter Pence signs at the time. And so we did this whole thing. I took the morning off of work, and because I knew it would not go well. And I had, of course, emailed Fran on Friday being like, hey, heads up for what's about to happen. Like, we're launching a Patreon. We're rebranding It's Kind of Funny. This is going to be a thing. And his response, I'll never forget it, was like, oh, okay, cool. The rebrand's awesome because, again, it's this Game Over Greggy thing. What are you representing when you say that? The Patreon thing's interesting. That's that paid platform, right? We should have a meeting about that. And I was like, okay, book the meeting. But I never at any point was like, am I derailing my plans for this? Took the morning off. It went live. We got a bunch of traction. We were lucky enough to start having people donate and all that jazz. And I'll never forget, I got in an Uber to go to work, and that's when I finally opened my work email. And there was one from Fran like, what the fuck are you doing? And we got there, and it was just like, at that moment, it was just like, hey, I told you we were going to do this. And he's like, we're going to have a meeting. I'm like, I never said I was. And it was back to that you don't own me thing, right? Of just like, listen, man, like this is what I envision this relationship being. And if it isn't that for you, we should have a conversation about that. And then the next day, Per Schneider, who's in charge of IGN, he had a meeting with me too. And he's like, what the fuck are you doing? And I laid it on. I'm like, we're not trying to leave. We're just trying. And he's like, it doesn't matter. Like, da, da, da. And then what always happens, or happened, I should say, happened. And it was that I always describe IGN, which a site I love, does great work. This isn't an insult to them, but I always describe it as a house on fire, where at any moment you can be like, oh my God, the rug is on fire. And in this case, we were the rug on fire. Oh my God, these guys launched that thing.
Sure.
But if you can just wait a little bit longer, they were literally like, oh my God, the drapes are on fire. And the drapes were, I think they leaked accidentally through IGN, whoever, UK, Japan, I don't know, some Kingdom Hearts unreleased trailer. And so like literally the Eye of Sauron just went away from us. And it went away, and to the point that on Friday, we had to email them and be like, hey, you were mad at us. We are mad at you. Like, come back to this conversation about us, because nothing had changed. And so we started having these meetings with them, and it was, as we got going, you started to dream. You know what I mean? Where it was like, of what are we going to do? And for us, it was that, we put up the first Patreon, and in 24 hours or whatever, we were earning something like $12,000 a month. And it was that, like, hold the phone, everybody. Like, the audience we're doing this for knows we have amazing jobs, and knows that one of the things I agreed to when I started the channel and was talking to IGN is that we wouldn't make competitive content. So if I could make it for IGN, I wouldn't make it for my channel, which meant no video games, no real comic coverage, no, the stuff that like people want to hear us talk about, we wouldn't talk about. So they're giving us $12,000 to listen to us talk about how we don't understand bidets. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
What would happen if we flipped the switch and did a games thing? And so this all was percolating. We're talking to IGN, and it was like, literally, they pulled us all aside and were like, what would if we can make this work, what would it look like for you? And we all gave them ridiculous, like, this is what we would want things. And of course they came back and were like, all right, we can make that happen. And we were all like, oh, but you've let us dream too long. You know what I mean? Like, it was that thing where we kept having that conversation of, if we don't do this now, we're going to look back in 5 years and go, what would have happened? It just really wants you to watch Netflix.
I'm just saying, can I figure out a solution for this to stay up the entire time?
It's got to be. Is there no
Yeah, I have it on sleep mode. I turned off the wallpaper. It's just shutting off or whatever. Sorry, I'm derailing your story. That's
the end of it. We got to the end of it.
Oh.
So it was that they just let us dream too long. And so it was that conversation where we went back in the meeting and we're like, all right, yeah, we're going to go. And I remember they were like, yeah, we understand. We can see that, obviously you guys are, and we're proud of you. And it was like 15 minutes into the meeting where we had already said it, where I was like, oh my God, we all just quit IGN. You know what I mean? And it was like this ridiculous conversation to have that we did it. And so, yeah, there wasn't ever any, that's it, we're fucking gone moment. You know what I mean? Or anything like that. It was super, super slow to the point. And then on top of that, we stayed for 3 more months because we quit so it must have been September. We quit. And then it was like, well, we know we're leading into the holiday season. Like, we're not going to take away your biggest personality, one of your biggest reviewers, the head and vice head of the video team.
Sure.
Like, we're not going to destroy the company on our way out. Like, we'll stay out. And then we're like, just don't tell anybody publicly. Is that cool? And they're like, yeah, totally. We don't want to tell anybody publicly. So we got to do everything. And then on that first week in January, they'd say, we're gone.
Wow. That's crazy. It's so, and just the idea of like sticking around for an extra 3 months is admirable of you. And I think and saved them a ton for sure.
And that's what it was about. You know what I mean? Like you asked earlier, like what IGN is and was like or whatever, right? And I always described it as family, and getting removed from it definitely, and removing myself definitely made me readjust what that actually meant. But I always talk about it. I got hired in 2007 and I left in 2015. And I always talk about it as I was the final hire of the old guard and the first new hire of the new guard, where I came in and I was still working with the people who had founded the site, people who were like, journalism degree. I didn't even graduate high school and I'm writing about these games and I'm doing this thing and all these different things. And so it was still the boys club, grandma's boy. I remember this time when he vomited on this thing or that thing or this person, like these horrible stories that like now everybody would be fired for.
Sure.
But then I was the first hire under Fox Interactive Media, and like you started having real HR departments and real bosses. And so I saw it go from a group of we're dudes and we made this thing, we all love it, to become what it is, I think, which is for the better, hey, we are a corporate entity. The people are hired for their roles, and if they aren't good at their roles, they are fired, and there are checks and balances and these things and that things that you did not have when I first started. And it was very much like, sleep under the desk, who fucking cares, let's get loaded, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, it became a real thing. And so it is a real thing that is far more talented than I think when we were starting off and doing our thing. But I also think that there was this bond, where you get that thing where it was more than a team for sure. And at the end, leaving, it was more of a corporation, but I still again, for as long as people were there, Fran included, right? Like I was leaving people who had been there forever and had been part of, in the same way Mizzou was so instructive for me and so formative for me. So was IGN, my first real job, my first real life after college. And so in becoming I moved to San Francisco out of the blue, knew no one here, right? I got married and divorced out here. I moved all over the place out here. Like it was another mega shift. I always talk about, in my life as a huge comic book nerd, every so often they like certain things about my story, but then they reboot the story, right? So it's like, like Portillo, they love. They've never rebooted him out of the story. I know one day they will, but okay, he lives in Missouri. No, now he lives in San Francisco. All right, now he's engaged. Now, all right, now he's not engaged. Now he's married. Now he's, like stuff like that. Like it's been a crazy, wild. Oh, now he's cancer. Like there's like so many different things that have happened and been thrown at me, and like how it's all changed. But like you wouldn't change it. Like it all got me here.
Isn't that amazing how everyone has these little, not little, sometimes big events that change and alter. And at the end of the day, you think about you walking up to school and you wearing, this one event in your life where you're at now may not have happened if you didn't walk down that hallway and just start knocking on doors.
Totally.
Right? Like think about like just the little things that I've talked about this before, to where, the reason I started Screw Attack was I worked at a sports station, or a sports radio station, right? But I interned there, and the guy the host I was working for, introduced me to this guy who was managing a sports bar, so I can get an actual real paying job and stuff. That's where I met my wife, and it's like all these but I wouldn't have got the internship at the sports station if I hadn't played slam ball, right? And so there's all these like little things that dictate, well, I met my wife because I played slam ball. If you just want to,
there's so many sliding doors moments like that. You know what I mean? Where
well, life's a crazy thing, Greg.
Yeah.
It's a crazy thing. Well, let's. I feel like we've been talking for so long. I need you to come back here again because we haven't even got into kind of funny, like really in depth into kind of funny. We haven't got into.
Well, you can go to youtube.com/kindoffunny and find out all about it. There's two channels too. It's confusing, but just go there.
And patreon.com/kindoffunnygames and kind of funny, right?
Right.
Cool. So make sure you go support Greg over there too. And his entire conglomerate that he's developed over the last 5-6 years.
Exactly. As we continue to somehow expand.
So I have a couple Patreon questions
Sure.
from folks who have contributed. Thank you, patrons. You can go to patreon.com/CraigSkitz and support there. First one comes from you are a PlayStation addict. You love achievements.
You know that.
You
Trophies.
I'm sorry.
I know. I love trophies.
My fault. You like? Is it platinum? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, you get a platinum. Okay. You get all the trophies in the game.
Okay, so you're gonna. Charles wants to know, what trophy are you most proud of and why?
Charles, that's a great question, man. I am immediately drawn to, because of who I am, my DC Universe Online platinum. You know what I mean? And I have 2 of them, of course, PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4.
Of course.
Don't get too excited,
Of
of
course.
It's one, if you get the trophy on one and you turn on the other one, you get that trophy too. But DC Universe Online, I am not an MMO player. And so when they announced that game, and literally they announced it as soon as I started at IGN, and you talk about it taking years and years and years to come out, I had no expectations of that game being good. And depending on who you are, you can argue if it's good or not. But it achieved everything I wanted. And so to have it be so much fun and have me make superheroes in it and villains in it and go play through it and, I think last time they calculated my hours, which is when I did up at noon, it was 900. I play a lot of games, but I'm the guy who plays the most recent thing and moves on to the next thing because it's still that reviewer's mentality in me. And so even in especially now where I'm not even doing the same kind of reviews, if I'll play something and if it doesn't grab me in the first few hours, I'm out and I'll go to something else. The fact that I was able to commit that much time to that game in the throes of running the PlayStation team and the throes of, doing Beyond and all these other things I had to be up on, that's ridiculous. So I'm incredibly proud of my DC Universe Online cred.
Way to go, Greg. Thank you. Nailed it. Zachary wants to know, this is actually a good question for Zachary. He says, I recently plugged in my PS4 for the first time in years. What are some PS4 exclusives that I missed out on besides Last of Us and Bloodborne?
Oh, nice. Okay. Well, if you go right now to youtube.com/kindoffunnygames or podcast services around the globe and grab the latest episode of PS I Love You XOXO, which might not be the latest one by this post. We just did a 72 game tournament to determine the best PlayStation 4 exclusive of all time. So obviously my favorite game of all time at the moment is God of War. I did not like God of War on the previous generations. I enjoyed the gameplay. I always hated Kratos. Thought he was a one-note character who screamed everything. This guy sucks. God of War 2018 from Sony Santa Monica and Cory Barlog is so amazing. Not a moment is wasted in that game, whether it's listening. The credit I always give it is being in the boat and one of your non-playable characters who hangs out with you tells you stories that aren't key to the actual story. But I remember getting to shore and not getting out of the boat because I wanted him to finish his story. It's upgrades and its characters and its relationships and its moments that are fucking full of hype and then there's so much emotion in it. God of War, yeah, if you haven't played that, for sure, get on that.
There you go, Zach. You're on
Zach Attack.
All right, nice. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to let you go because we've already gone an hour and a long time. But this has been so much fun. I need you to tell everybody once again where they can find you if there's anything else you need to share with the world right now. Now's your time.
Oh, thank you very much. First off, I'm very proud of you, Craig. Congratulations on spinning off and doing this. It's awesome
Thanks,
to see you
Greg.
do it.
I hope all the best friends come and they can, they watch you. And
for me, I run a company called Kind of Funny. You can go to kindoffunny.com and it's just kind of a pile of stuff. But if you go to youtube.com/kindoffunnygames, we have a bunch of different podcasts there about games. You can go to youtube.com/kindoffunny, find a bunch of different non-gaming podcasts, things like that. And then podcast services around the globe. You punch in Kind of Funny, you'll find something we've done.
And of course, patreon.com/kindoffunny.
Of course. Yeah, if you're already on Patreon, it's so much easier. Patreon.com/kindoffunny.
It's crazy. You get it all early and stuff. It's good.
Exactly. Ad-free, post shows.
Ooh, man, that's good stuff. Well, I'll tell you what, Greg, you're a great dude. I look forward to having you on and diving deeper in. I feel like I can talk to you for about 6-7 hours and it would not get old.
We could definitely do an Extra Life marathon. It's just us talking.
maybe sometime, but we'll do it again soon for sure.
Sounds good.
I want to thank Greg once again. If you want to find Greg and his pursuit of testing all the Oreos in the world, you can find him over at Kind of Funny and Kind of Funny Games. Those boys are outstanding. Those boys, girls, the whole crew that they have, really hardworking folks, and they get everything that they deserve. They work so hard. Man. So, look, I got a great slew of guests coming up. I can't wait to share with you. Please subscribe to the channel if you made it this far. Next week, I can't wait to share it with you. As a matter of fact, I will right now. Next week, Scott the Woz. This should be a really great episode. Actually, it is. I've already recorded it, so I can't wait to share it with you. Listen to it early on patreon.com/CraigSkitz and go support me there. Guys, have a great week. We'll see you next Monday, noon Central Time. Bye-bye.